All right, the recording is now started, and we may just need to go through the roll call just for the
Okay.
record to do it again.
Okay,
So
perfect.
I'll go ahead and do the roll call one more time for our council members. So Lynn Hamilton,
I am here.
all right. Mike Mathers, our vice chair. Mark Ellery,
Here.
Leah Siggety,
Here.
and Eric Edelin.
Here.
All right, thank you. It's on the record now in our recording, and we'll move on to item number 3.
Okay, perfect. Item number 3 is the approval of the minutes that we had for the meeting on September 13th. Seems like only yesterday that we were all here, but it has been quite a while. So since it is a recording and it is posted, do we have a motion to approve those minutes?
I will move to approve the minutes from September 13th.
I second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Those minutes are approved as recorded. All right, move on to jump from 3 all the way down to 7, and we'll turn it over to Kevin.
Yeah, I just noticed that my numbering's a little off there. What I do is I reuse the agenda from the last meeting and just, adjust it for the next one. And I guess I didn't adjust the numbering. So 3 to 7, weights and measures proposed legislation. So this item was requested to be on our agenda today. And so I'm going to go through first and just give a summary of the legislative ideas that we have. I'm going to go through and give just a summary of the 2 different proposals that we have. I will start off by saying neither of these are set in stone. They're just ideas. We did have a workshop on November 16th with stakeholders to talk and discuss some of these proposals, and we've received some comments since then to help us develop them further. And given that the new administration is coming in to our state government in January, not really sure what that means as far as legislative proposals for us, whether or not we'll be able to push anything into the legislature or have anybody else do that for us. So for the time being, though, I will go ahead and stop sharing, and then I will just go over the summary here. So we have 2 proposals. The first one is a little bit more simple than the second one. The first proposal is to amend ARS 33452, which is our statute that lists all of the maximum license fees that we can charge for commercial devices. And we're proposing to eliminate 2 unnecessary annual license fees and add 1 annual license fee. So the 2 categories that we're proposing to remove are, one is called a key lock limited access with accumulators per hose and nozzle device. And this is a mystery device to us modern weights and measures folks. I think this category has been around a little bit longer than all of us have. And when we looked in our database, we only had 4 of these devices licensed, and it's something in the fueling device category, so a motor fuel dispenser. And when we went out and checked these devices, I think 2 of them no longer existed, and the other 2 fit into the classification of just a regular motor fuel dispenser. There was no reason to differentiate it as far as the license fee, and so we felt that because there were only 4 devices to begin with, and only 2 of them really existed, and it wasn't 100% clear on what they actually were intended to do, we felt that it would be appropriate to remove that category. The second one is called a remote indicator and control unit. And what this is, historically, we've considered it to be the console that is used to control and authorize the fuel dispensers at the fuel station. And it's one of those pieces of equipment that, although it has a role in the consumer transaction, it really doesn't have a role in the metrological capability, the measurement of the device. And that's really what we're concerned about with weights and measures. So the motor fuel dispenser has the meters that does the measuring. You have this remote indicator control unit, typically inside the convenience store, that the clerk is using to authorize the dispensers, and it records the transaction and all that type of information. And so that is the other type of device that we're looking to eliminate the license fee. Currently, for both of these items, the annual license fee is $22.50. And so for every fuel station that's out there, you have the license fees for the different meters, and other devices that may be there if you have like an air machine or you have a propane meter or something like that. And then you have one of these remote indicator and control units for each convenience store, basically. And the software, the equipment does have a certificate of conformance through the National Type Evaluation Program, just like a fuel dispenser would. But again, just based on its role in the transaction, we feel that it's not necessary for it to have a license. You're already covering basically what we do during our inspections through the license fee for the motor fuel dispensers. So both of those, again, $22.50, looking to eliminate those. And then the one that we're looking to add is for electric vehicle supply equipment. So the actual electric vehicle chargers, where a consumer is charged for the amount of electricity that is essentially fueling their vehicle. We're looking to establish a license fee for those. Currently, we don't have anything that an electric vehicle charger would fit under. And so we're looking to establish a $24 annual license fee for those. And we estimate, I think our last count, there's about 2,000 charging points in the state of Arizona. And obviously that's growing with, additional electric vehicles coming into the marketplace. And that license fee would be charged per vehicle connection point. So each physical connector that you'd plug into the vehicle, because a charging station may have 10 or 20 or however many. And it's only those that are actually charging that fee for the electricity, and they can charge other fees as well. They can charge fee for time connected in addition to the amount of energy dispensed, and there's some other fees that are allowed to be charged, but it's only those that are charging a fee. A lot of locations, as a convenience to their customers or as a convenience to residents, have free charging stations that might be in a parking structure or something like that. Those don't meet the definition of a commercial device, and they wouldn't fall under our regulation unless they start charging those fees. So, and they do have to charge by the kilowatt hour, by that energy. In the past, we've had them where it's just by time, and we've received complaints from consumers on, well, if I'm plugged in, how do I know how much energy I'm getting at the end of the day? It's just, I was there for 30 minutes, but my battery only charged up, a quarter of the way. Yeah, the consumer needs to know how much energy they're going. It would be the same if you were at a fuel dispenser, a gas station, and they're charging you by time to pump gas into your vehicle. Well, how much do you end up with at the end of that transaction? You really don't know. So that's the first proposal. And the electric vehicle charging stations, they already meet the definition of a commercial device, which is under ARS 33401-13. And so we already have the authority to inspect those, test those, and license those. The big barrier is just that license fee that we need to work out. And by eliminating those two previous license fee categories and adding the one new license fee category for electric vehicle charging stations, there will be a slight increase in revenues just based on the additional number of charging stations that there are versus the number of licenses that we are looking to eliminate, but it's not a substantial. I think we calculated it and it was less than $20,000, I think, when we did the calculation. So it's not like we're looking at millions of additional dollars going into state government on this new license fee. So any questions about that first proposal?
I guess the only question I have is, does the department have a protocol in place for measuring the kilowatt hours and stuff like that in the case of some kind of complaint?
So at this point, we do not. And to give you some background on the national level, on what's happened with electric vehicle supply equipment. Currently in Arizona, we adopt a tentative code for electric vehicle supply equipment out of Handbook 44. It's section 3.40 in Handbook 44. And it's been tentative up until this year, where the conference actually voted it in as a permanent code, meaning that states that adopt, I believe it's the 2023 edition going forward, they'll be able to enforce that code. And it has the tolerances in there, it has the specifications and requirements. And the state that's really done the most work on electric vehicle supply equipment, if anybody could probably guess what it is, but it's California. They actually have their own type approval program that they've run different charging stations through. They've done a lot of work vetting the test equipment that's out there for these devices. And the test equipment is it doesn't look very exciting. It's a box with a display on it and some buttons. And then there's another piece next to it that's called a load emulator. And basically it's a bunch of resistors that simulates the load of an electric vehicle. So when you're getting that energy from the charging station, it's going through the device that's measuring the electrical energy, and then it's sending it to the load emulator, which basically dissipates that energy, simulating the charging of a battery. And so the equipment is out there to charge the level 1 and level 2 AC chargers, and it's being developed for the level 3, the DC fast chargers. And then the metrology lab standards are there as well to actually certify and calibrate the field standards. And cost-wise, last estimate I got, it was in the ballpark of $40,000 for one piece of test equipment, which right now, would be enough for us, but in the future, as the infrastructure continues to grow, probably would need more pieces of equipment. And in California, and I think New York State, they can do the certification of that equipment. And so we would probably just send it off to our neighbors in California for the time being. So that's a long answer to your question, but at this point, no, we don't have the ability to, but we would still need to adopt that new handbook anyway. Not that we really couldn't enforce the tentative code just because it has been adopted, but formally we would like to adopt that version of the handbook and then and have the test equipment obviously to go out and do that. So right now we're trying to be proactive and establish that license fee ahead of time.
That makes sense. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and I actually was able to view, was a year ago, at the Western Weights and Measures Conference, I was actually able to view a demonstration where they were testing a Tesla charging station that they had at the parking garage at the hotel where we were. And Tesla was even there, and they did a demonstration on how the electric vehicles work and how, they're working with weights and measures agencies to help comply with the standards for the charging equipment and stuff. So it's very interesting, and there's still a lot of unknowns in it that are trying to be worked out. So any other questions on the first proposal? All right. Now the second proposal, a little bit more complex here, has to do with our statutes relating to motor fuels. And originally this was basically a suggestion from the Department of Environmental Quality to amend a subparagraph in one of our statutes. So ARS 3493H, H is in Henry, which requires the Department of Environmental Quality to adopt rules relating to motor fuels in our cleaner burning gasoline area, area A. And it requires ADEQ basically to develop these rules in consultation with weights and measures. And really the way it's been done since that statute was established in 1997 is that weights and measures has done the developing in consultation with ADEQ, because we're ultimately the agency that enforces those rules and statutes. And so the suggestion was, hey, we're not really doing this over at ADEQ, you have, and so we feel that the statute should be flip-flopped a little bit. And we looked at it and we said, yeah, we agree, because that's the way it's been working, and it still involves both agencies. It's just that we're the ones that have been doing the statute and rule writing, and so it's more appropriate to have it reflect that. While we were looking at that, our regulatory compliance administrator, Michelle Wilson, who's very knowledgeable about our motor fuels rules. She actually worked at ADEQ when a lot of those rules were drafted back in the late 90s. She saw an opportunity to kind of reorganize things, not change anything, just reorganize and make it easier for people to read these statutes because they're scattered all over in different articles. And so what she wants to do is bring them all under one new article is what we're hopefully proposing, and to clarify the meaning of some of the rules. So basically it would be reorganizing motor fuel requirements to consolidate the requirements that are currently in Article 3 and Article 6 into one article. We were proposing Article 8 because it doesn't exist, to improve clarity and readability. And so as you're reading it, you just kind of follow the story rather than having to go jump around within our statutes. Removing the requirements for ADEQ to adopt the motor fuel rules for Area A. So that would be us, Weights and Measures, adopting the motor fuel rules for Area A in consultation with ADEQ. Removing outdated requirements related to approval of alternate control measures for gasoline formulations. So under the Clean Air Act, the state cannot approve alternate formulations without EPA approval. So a new section regarding motor fuel waivers that we would add would outline that current process and get rid of those outdated requirements that sometimes are confusing for people when supply tightness or challenges like that arise, and they think we can issue waivers right off the bat when really, no, we can't. Remove outdated requirements that are now defined in federal law, common standards and state rules. So just if it's already somewhere else that's easy for people to access, why do we need to state it again? Clarify that fuel shall be sold by the gallon or liters to maintain consistency for consumer protection. Currently, our statutes allow us to allow retailers in the state, if they wanted to, sell by like a fraction of a gallon, a half gallon. And you can imagine how confusing that might be for a consumer to go and see something priced by the half gallon and do the calculation. And we actually have had this conversation recently, which is one reason why this statute came up, because we had some retailers who were selling a high-priced racing motor fuel for on-road vehicles, and they couldn't go above $10 a gallon because the fuel dispenser programming doesn't allow it. And so the question was, well, what can we do to get at a higher price point? And so one of the thoughts was, well, liters, nobody in the United States is really familiar with liters, but you could do that and you'd have to state it clearly. And we looked at our statutes and said, well, you could adjust the pricing to a half gallon, but that would really confuse people. So the liters is still kind of something that's in our back pocket. In the rare event, hopefully, that ever arises, we've come up with a different solution for those handful of retailers that needed a price above $10. But at the same time, we're like, we should probably get rid of this half gallon or fraction of a gallon thing because other states have prohibitions on pricing in such a manner. So anyway, updating appropriate references to federal regulations and adopted standards. This is very important for our cleaner burning gasoline statutes. Removing an outdated allowance for a 1 pound vapor pressure increase in Area B during the winter months, and then including a new authority for Weights and Measures to verify that diesel exhaust fluid meets the quality specifications. So modern diesel vehicles, in addition to the motor fuel itself, there's the diesel exhaust fluid, which for smaller vehicles is sold in a plastic container, but for larger vehicles like semi trucks, they actually have dispensers like a gas pump that you dispense the diesel exhaust fluid in. And we have specialized test equipment to test the volume of those dispensers. And so like all of the other liquids that we test for motor fuels and such, we felt that it would be appropriate for us to ensure that diesel exhaust fluid meets quality specifications. And it's something that's done in other states. So it's really just a combination, usually of either natural or synthetic urea and water is all diesel exhaust fluid is, but it needs to be a certain percentage of each, and there needs to be a certain purity involved. And so it's a very interesting thing if you've ever seen diesel exhaust fluid in person, and it crystallizes when it touches the air. It's a really interesting material, but anyway, that's it for the second legislative proposal. I know that's a lot more complex. Does anybody have any questions on that one?
No question, Kevin. This is Mark. I just, as one that was there with Michelle in '97 on the original rule, I think I just want to go on record saying that she's done a fine job with putting together this portion of the proposed legislation. So I know there are some outstanding comments and questions, but just viewing it as a whole, it's just a fantastic job. Just wanted to say that.
Thank you, Mark. And yeah, Michelle Wilson, she deserves to be recognized for a lot of things that she does, but she's very great with the technical aspect, especially of cleaner burning gasoline. And we're very fortunate to have her here. And over the years, as I've been working with her and questions come up regarding CBG, we see statutes and we have to sit there sometimes and open the rule book and talk about, what does this statute mean? What does this rule mean? And that always signals to us, hey, this could be written better. And you don't often have the opportunities to you can't just go out tomorrow and change a statute or change a rule, right? There's a long process in either case that needs to happen to do that. And so when an opportunity arises, Michelle Wilson, she's somebody who gets excited saying, yes, now I can finally sit down and put this together and word it in the way that I think will make better sense to everybody and make it easier to read. Because one of the things that in state government, and especially in Ducey's administration, that he's tried to do is reduce the burden on state government. And there's lots of different ways you can do that. You can, eliminate license fees. You can shorten processes for applications and get rid of unnecessary rules. But another thing is just making your rules easier to read. And if you've ever taken a look at our cleaner burning gasoline rules, they're just a pain to read. And we sit there and get headaches and our eyes get crossed over them. And so Michelle, she recognizes that opportunity, and when the opportunity arises, she acts upon it. And so this is kind of her baby in a way, and I think she's done a fine job as well. So if there are no other questions, then I guess that's all I have for those legislative proposals. Okay, so rulemaking, this is fairly brief at this point. I wish I could be in this meeting saying that our rulemaking was approved at the last governor's regulatory review council meeting, but it was not, because there were some technical questions that came up, mainly regarding E15 and motor fuel storage tanks, their compatibility, and there's a question about financial liability that the state may or may not see by using E15 in storage tanks, and if there's ever an issue with E15 causing damage to storage tanks. And so that's where we're at right now. We're on the calendar for the next governor's regulatory review study session and council meeting, which is December 28th is the study session and January 4th is the council meeting. And so we're hoping, right now we're working with ADEQ to help address those questions from some of the council members. I feel that we've been able to adequately address the remaining council members' questions that have come up. And we've submitted written comments outlining and clarifying basically E15 and some of the concerns that have come up. And so we're hoping to work with ADQ to do the same this time around and submit some written comments. And then we're hoping at that next study session and council meeting that will have satisfied all the comments from the council members. And hopefully at that time, our rulemaking will be ready for approval. So it pushes us back about a month, but we're still planning to go forward and hopefully get the approval for our proposed rules, and then we'll file with the Secretary of State and go on from there. So that's the latest with the rulemaking. Any questions on that?
Kevin, it's Mark. Could you provide those dates again for the study session in council? Was it December 28th and January 24th?
Study session is December 28th, and then the council meeting is January 4th,
4th.
right after the new year. Yeah, the study session's always a week prior to the council meeting, and you can always go on the GERC website. In fact, I can show it here really quick, just so you all can see what it looks like here. Let me present really quick. All right. All right, so GERC is the Governor's Regulatory Review Council. We call them GERC for short. They call themselves GERC for short as well. You can look here on their meetings webpage, and they'll have information for the past meetings. They'll also post agendas for future meetings. They do it about a week in advance or so. So just keep an eye out for that. I will, this last time around, I sent out a notification on our listserv. I will do the same when we get close to the December 28th meeting. They are holding their meetings virtually only, so people can attend virtually just like some folks are doing on our meeting today. And you can go in there and see basically what the council does, who the council members are, all of that good stuff. But it's just gerc.az.gov is the website. And usually the GERC meetings, the best way to access for me is just right here from their homepage. They'll just have a, December 28th study session. They'll post a notice and that'll be it. Any questions about that?
Okay.
Excellent.
Then we stick with Kevin one more time. I guess I should turn that on. We stick with Kevin one more time for just the general weights measures update.
Okay, and our general weights and measures update is fairly short, but a couple of things going on here. So first, we've talked a lot about our risk-based inspection plan in the past. We're continuing to move along with that with our inspector training. Right now, our inspectors are finishing up their training on water vending machines. So those are the bottle filling machines that you'll find, outside of the grocery store or at a water and ice store, something like that. So they're finishing up that training. Again, we're rewriting the standard of work or revising the standard of work for all of our different inspection categories and retraining and certifying all of our inspectors through a more formalized training program than we've had in the past. And so our next one on the agenda to do is going to be linear measuring devices, which is one category that we haven't spent a lot of time on in the past year. And those are the types of devices you'll find at the hardware store that often are measuring length of wire or chain or rope, or at the outdoor supply store. And so they're kind of interesting devices. We don't believe there's a lot of them out there licensed that should be. We do have a licensing requirement for those. And so it'll be a learning experience for all of us, our compliance managers, having an interesting time, I guess, learning more about those devices. There is a code in Handbook 44 for linear measuring devices, just like there is for fuel dispensers and scales and things like that. So we're refreshing ourselves with that, and then we'll be out in the marketplace looking at linear measuring devices. And then comes packaged commodities, which is a big one. And that's basically testing any type of packaged item against its labeled quantity statement. So if you have a bottle of water that contains 16.9 fluid ounces, we can test that to make sure it contains that much. Items sold by weight, items sold by count. I remember one year around this time being in a Walmart and testing holiday decorations that were sold by count. And that was an interesting experience. The manager that was with me was very helpful. And didn't realize we had done that before. And so I was there opening up boxes of ornaments, making sure that there were 10 or 12 or whatever. And anyway, so packaged commodities, it covers a whole lot of different categories. And we're going to spend a couple of months really getting in depth with the training there because it can be quite complex on some things and very simple on others. And so that's one that our risk-based plan says there's a high demand for, just because think about all the commodities in the marketplace that are sold by weight, measure, count that could be short or could be giving away product where the retailer or the manufacturer is losing money. So that's a big one that we're going to be looking into. Outside of that, the design of our risk-based plan hasn't changed. We're refreshing the data as we complete inspections and documenting our inspector training. So it's going along really well so far. Any questions about the risk-based?
One question just popped in my head. One question that popped in my head as you were doing that, because walking through this, how will you find these linear measuring devices? Is it just to walk into every Home Depot store and see if they have one?
Yeah,
or
it'll
do
be.
you reach out to the businesses themselves and say, "Hey, how do you do this?"
Yeah, it'll be doing a survey, and it'll be a little bit of both. Some of we'll have to visit the location and verify if they have that type of device and basically register that type of device. Some of it, if there's a large company, like a hardware company or something like that, we can contact them and say, hey, we have this requirement. We notice that some devices are licensed at some locations, but not all of them. Can you help us, with this? And so usually that's the more efficient way to do it. If we send an inspector out, obviously we're going to do as many inspections as we can at that location while we're there, just to make our trip worthwhile. But yeah, we may find some surprises along the way about the types of devices that are out there, the quantity of them, and it may impact our risk-based plan a little bit. Usually what we found in the marketplace, and this will probably be a discussion once we've tested a few devices, is that when they're being used, I even had a personal experience where I was getting some wire and the employee didn't really know how to use the device. And so at the end of it, I ended up getting a little bit more length than I probably ordered. But that was just because, they were kind of estimating as they went along. And so depending on how the devices are used, we may find that the necessity of inspecting them, isn't there. We may find that we need some specialized test equipment because basically you send like a tape measure through the device and it's measuring, and you compare the counter with the measure of your tape, and it's really interesting. So we're looking forward to learning more about those. It is something that other states take a look at. They don't have the NTEP requirements like a lot of commercial devices just because of their simplicity. But they are something out there that weights and measures agencies often regulate. So it'll be interesting for us.
I have a question as well. As far as the devices, is it like, do they all have to be like specifically electronic devices? Is there any kind of requirement as far as like a device that you're speaking about that calculates it as to opposed to, just a standard, measuring stick, for instance, like at Joann's when you go to get, 3 yards of fabric? Are there any requirements as far as that goes?
So Handbook 44 does have specifications for these types of devices. Most of the ones that I've seen are mechanical. So they have a counter that, advances as the wheels that do the measuring essentially rotate. You mentioned the devices like, at a fabric store where they have a yardstick down or something like that. Those have come into question as to whether or not they're a linear measuring device. And in any case, regardless of the device that's used, we can do a packaging test. So if somebody says, I ordered a yard of fabric and I only got, 3/4 of a yard or whatever, we can go and see, well, what type of measure are they using? How are they doing this? Observe them and then say, okay, this is where it's maybe going wrong or maybe it isn't. And so, yeah, it's historically, I think the yardsticks and simple pieces of equipment like that are not things that we would license, but we just have to look into that. I don't believe other states are licensing things like yardsticks and stuff. It's more the actual mechanical devices that do the counting.
And is there a requirement that they use that type of device, for instance, if they are selling, linear quantities like that?
It depends on what's suitable for the application. So you have something like chain, for instance, or rope. You're having a mechanical type counter that's measuring as you go along. That makes sense, but for fabric that wouldn't work. And that's where you just have this linear measure. So yeah, those are great questions, and that's something our compliance managers investigating as well. The nice thing about weights and measures is that if there's something that we come across, typically somebody in another state's seen it. And so there's a director's listserv, and we now have one that like our compliance managers and our compliance officers can communicate back and forth with other states and say, hey, we've come across this. What do you do in this situation? Or what part of the handbook applies? And it's really nice. And then when we go to our national conference on weights and measures, like the meeting that's coming up in January, that's an opportunity for our compliance managers, Mike and Vince, to go and ask those questions and have those conversations directly with their peers. So it's really nice to have that because in a lot of other agencies, if you go to the same type of agency in another state, their laws and regulations might be vastly different. But in weights and measures, the whole idea is equity across the nation, right? And so everybody, a pound is a pound, a gallon is a gallon, whether you're in Arizona or North Carolina or Maine or Massachusetts or whatever. And so we all use the same standards, we all use the same equipment, and it works really well for helping solve those kind of problems that come up or things that are new to us.
Yeah, I was just kind of curious because just from my experience with just some businesses in our industry, I could see, if somebody either doesn't have the device or isn't using it correctly, and weights and measures shows up for an inspection, and they're just like, oh no, we don't use that. If we sell by the foot, but we don't use a device, even if they're selling it by 500 feet, they may say, well, we walk it out to that fence right there, and that's 500 feet. So I was just kind of curious if there was any kind of requirement, or if that's part of the statutes or anything like that.
Yeah, I actually bought a piece of pool drain hose where they had a marking on the floor, and they said, well, if I go from here to there, that's 100 feet or whatever. And I didn't question it. Being the weights and measures person that I am, sometimes I'll be like, yeah, but it seemed about right to me. And for the cost per unit, I was like, I'm not too concerned. But one of the statutes that we have is ARS 33474, which is presumptive evidence of use. So if there's a commercial device in a place where things are being bought and sold, whether a location says they use it or not, if we look at it and we can assume that it's being used commercially. Now, a lot of times we'll have that conversation. We'll say, well, how is this actually being used? And they'll say, well, yeah, we never do it because this is the way that it's done now. And we'll give people the benefit of the doubt, saying, look, we're not going to license this, we'll take a picture of it, document it. And if we ever find out that it's in use, then, well, you're in trouble there. But in some cases, it's like, the story just doesn't line up. We're going to apply that. And in most cases, we'll apply the presumptive evidence of use just because there's those rare events where the device may be used for that reason. So yeah, but we do have that statute that we can use.
And then one other question that I had with the packaged commodity training that they're going through, can we expect more of those in the industry as more and more of your inspectors become more fluent in that process?
Yes, the packaging inspections will become a more regular thing. Not only because when we go out and do our training, our inspectors will need to go out and collect a compliance sample. So they'll need to do those inspections, do those package tests. But then going forward, as part of our risk-based plan, there will be more of those packaging inspections that'll be required from the plan. So yes, that's something that I would expect going forward. We're not training all of our inspectors in that, but we're training the majority of them to have coverage in the state, at least for the basic, items sold by weight, items sold by volume, things like that. There are some special cases that come up where you have to dig into the books because it's like, how do we test, chamois that you use to dry off your car or something like that? There's a really elaborate test procedure for that. It exists just for chamois, but if you get a complaint, we'll usually have some of our more experienced inspectors do that for the basic stuff. Yeah, I would expect that happening more often. Yes.
Okay.
Um,
I believe there was something else that you and I were speaking about at the beginning about you showing us something on the website.
oh yeah, the newsletter.
Newsletter.
Yep, I'll
Yes.
get to that here. I have a couple of other items really
Okay.
quick for our update.
Go ahead.
So we have new inspection stickers that'll be coming out in 2023. They have the same state of Arizona design that our current green ones do. And there's a mixture of them out in the field. You'll see some rectangular ones, and then you'll see some green state of Arizona ones, and you may see some older ones than that. But our new ones going forward, just so people are aware, they'll be the same state of Arizona shape, but they'll be copper. So, and seeing that copper is a state of Arizona color, that's our next one in the rotation. And going forward, we're going to rotate the colors every year to help our inspectors kind of identify better when a device was last inspected. They still have all the information on there for the public to contact us, the QR code, the phone number. They won't have dates on them anymore, partially because we want to see how the risk-based plan pans out as far as the frequency of inspection in certain categories. And so the date won't be recorded on the sticker. However, our inspection records will still exist. So they just say tested for accuracy to signify that when we were at that device last, that's what we did. So copper is the next color going forward. I don't have a good picture of one. I have one here on my computer from the first batch, but they're kind of a metallic-y copper color and they look really cool. So just expect to see those in the marketplace for 2023. And again, the colors will rotate going forward. And then we are planning to hold Weights and Measures Week events in March of 2023. So for those who are not familiar with Weights and Measures Week, it's a national week that's celebrated in honor of weights and measures. When President Adams signed the Weights and Measures Law in 1799 and commemorating that. And so what we've done in the past is we'll hold events typically at grocery stores, and we'll have different elementary school children come, and they'll walk through stations where we demonstrate how weights and measures applies to their lives, what they're learning for math and science. So things like conversions and volume, and usually the kids have a lot of fun with it. So for 2023, currently we have at least 4 locations lined up. We're going to have events in Williams, at a Safeway, Yuma at an Albertsons, a Food City in Tucson, and then trying to remember who the other one was here in Phoenix. We have one more set up in the Phoenix area. So I'll have more information on those going forward. We'll probably send out a notice on that. But if you're interested in participating at all in Weights and Measures Week events, or you would like to hold one, at your store or at your business, or want to participate in any way, just let us know. We usually bring out our equipment. Sometimes we'll bring out our big scale truck so the kids can see our smallest weight, the 1 milligram versus the 1,000 pound weight that's sitting there. And they really get a kick out of it. So Weights and Measures Week, we are planning to do that in 2023. And it's always March 1st through 7th, no matter how it falls on the days of the week. It's March 1st through 7th. So we're excited about that. And that's all I have. I will, Lynn, really quick, just go ahead and show. So Arizona Department of Agriculture, for those who are not familiar, has a newsletter and a quarterly newsletter that's meant for the industry representatives that we serve, although anybody's welcome to view it. I just wanted to show people really quick how you can access that newsletter. And it's important because A, you can learn more about agriculture and what we do as a department, and B, there's a nice little article written in there every quarter by yours truly called Weights and Measures 101. And so you can learn more about what we do. So if you go to our agriculture homepage, agriculture.az.gov, if you're not signed up for our email list, you can always go down to the bottom of the page, get email updates with the latest news, and insert your email address there. And then you can go and select which listservs you would like to join. Or if you just want to see the newsletter every so often, click on newsletter here at the bottom, this kind of green menu area. And you'll see online and PDF versions of our newsletter. So for 2022, and then we have it set up for 2023. We started this spring of this year, and you can go and you can click on one of these newsletters, and they're really well done. There's a lot of good information in here. I learn something new usually every time I read it. You can zoom in, obviously, but anyway, that's how you access the newsletters, and you can just flip page to page. And so, yep, it's right here on our website. Again, you go to our homepage, scroll down to the bottom, click on newsletter, and you can download the PDF or view the online version. We'll have a new one coming out in January for the winter. And so it'll be here, the winter 2023 version. And I have an article in there about some of the test equipment that we used and some of the terminology. So feel free to take a look, but that's our newsletter. And that's all I have.
All right.
Kevin, it's Mark. Just real quick, backing up to the general update. A meeting or two ago, you mentioned hiring an inspector for the North region, I think, or Northwest. I was just curious if you guys had picked up a full-time employee.
That's a great question. That position's remained open. And we've had a real challenge with applicants, qualified applicants, I should say. Even the volume of applicants in general has been tough for us. I'm sure, other people, other businesses can relate. It's hard to find personnel for one reason or another. And so I believe what we're going to do with that, after the last round of applicants came through, we have a couple of inspectors who have informed me that they're going to be retiring next year after over 20 years of service within our agency. So I hate to lose them, but it's well deserved, of course. And so I think we're going to move this vacant position down in the Tucson area, because one of our vacancies is going to open up there when an inspector retires. And so we'd like to have that person who's retiring kind of work a new inspector through some training before they leave, and pass on that institutional knowledge that they have, so that by the time that they retire, we have that position already filled, and then we'll have another vacancy that we can fill. And so I think we're going to move it down to Tucson at this point. That was the last discussion that I had with our management folks here. So that's what we're looking at this point. And then as far as covering the northern Arizona area, at our next staff meeting, one of the things that we're going to do is brainstorm some ways that we can help support our lone inspector up in the northern Arizona area, because he's always driving back and forth. We get consumer complaints, and we need to respond to those within 10 days. And so it's becoming challenging for him to have opportunities, time to do anything else. And we have staff, based out of Phoenix and other areas that can support him. And so we're going to brainstorm kind of a solution there to help him out for the time being. And hopefully in the future, we can open a position back up north and help kind of that northeastern part of our state as well. So that's where we're at with hiring right now.
Thank you.
Okay. And excuse me. And before we move on, I just want to let you know working with the Safeway Albertsons companies, our stores actually love Weights and Measures Week. They look forward to it. And we did see the email come through and hopefully you've gotten confirmation back from us that we will be participating in that. So it's great to see all the kids get in there and learn and see what's going on with it. So good stuff. All right. At this point, moving on to the call to the public. I just wanted to open it up if there's anybody out there from the public that wanted to bring up anything. Gentlemen?
No, we're from Environmental Quality. We've worked with you guys, as you mentioned. We were in the office today, just kind of wanted to come in and listen into the meeting and see one of these in person. So thank you thanks for letting us sit in and listen in.
Perfect. Okay. With that, I don't believe we have any reason for executive session. We haven't discussed anything that way. So I think our next meeting, I think we've kind of gotten it down to, we just leave it up to Kevin to go ahead and suggest something quarterly down the road just to send that out. And I believe that that's, unless there's any objections to that, that's how we'll proceed with this next one. Looking at 3 months from now. So that would put us in March, right up there. We can go ahead and celebrate Weights and Measures Week after that. Go ahead, get some pictures into you for that one. So, all right. I believe we discussed last time that there was no need to move to close the meeting. Just ready to go. One more chance for anybody before we go ahead and close the meeting for today. No? All right. Thank you very much, Kevin, for everything that you do. Keep us posted on everything that way, and we'll talk to you all soon.
Thank you, Lynn. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.